Hello, and welcome to the first podcast of So What Does It Mean to Be a College Writer? And I'm your host, Elizabeth Boozy Cruz. Today's segment is going to be about 5 tips to help you succeed as a college writer. So I thought I would start off this segment with a quote by Vicky Campo, an instructor of writing. She said, "Writing is like sculpting. We shape and mold, then we step away and reflect on what we have. Then we move forward to shape and mold again, going back over, redefining." So I want you to reflect on what that process of shaping looks like for you, because I think that'll play an important role in what these 5 tips are. Okay, so now I want to move on into a story. This story comes from Plato's Phaedrus, and I think it'll set the scene a little bit before we move into these 5 tips. So Plato liked to include Socrates, his teacher, in these dialogues. So Socrates and Phaedrus are the 2 main characters in Plato's Phaedrus. And they're talking with one another, and Socrates presents this story. So this story has King Thamus and Thuth. Thuth was a god of many arts. He was a god of arithmetic and astrology and, lo and behold, writing. So he presented this gift of writing to King Thamus, and he said, "Oh, writing is going to bring great wisdom to the people, to the nations. It's going to help people's memories, people's minds, and give them just such great wisdom." Now, Thamus, instead of being grateful and saying, oh, Thuth, thank you so much for presenting this gift to me, said, no, I don't think so. Writing isn't a good thing. Writing isn't gonna cause great wisdom. It's gonna cause people to forget things, because they're just gonna write it down, and then they won't have to remember it because it'll be written down. And instead of being grateful, that's what he said. He presented writing as just a dead object. Speech was very common in those days, so that's what Thamus was used to. Thamus was used to being able to communicate with someone instead of writing, which, isn't a communicable thing. You can't communicate to writing and writing communicate back. So I know that probably wasn't the best way to start off with how to be a successful college writer, but I just want you to get these images in your head of what writing is, what writing was, and what writing could potentially be for you. Now that I've set the scene, let's move into what the 5 tips to help you succeed as a college writer are. Let's think about how we can make writing more like the sculpting process that Vicky Campo was talking about, the artistry of it, rather than this dead object that Thamus presented it as. Okay, so tip number 1. I'm sure you didn't see this one coming. Start writing early. So start writing early. This doesn't mean the early evening hours the day before the paper is due. This means, let's say you have a week to do a writing assignment. Day number 1, you're free writing, brainstorming, and then you're moving into day number 2, researching, coming up with sources. Day number 3, maybe you're organizing a little bit, and then you go into writing the rough draft and having other people look it over, proofreading it, and then turning it in. So writing takes time. I know, it's an unfortunate fact for some people who don't have enough time, but writing, in order to become a successful college writer, it takes some time. So, and the best way to do that is to schedule yourself that you're going to do this in a certain number of days, so that you don't become overwhelmed by the end. So, start writing early. Okay, tip number 2. Now this one might come to a shock for some people. Begin with no structure in mind. Begin with no structure in mind. Why? Well, if I'm going to be honest, if you want to write a well thought out paper, it's better to start in a way where you don't know where it's going to lead you. If you come to a college paper with, okay, I'm going to talk about this, you already outlined it and everything, then sometimes you're constricted to those ideas. Sometimes it's just better to let your mind take you. Now, that doesn't mean you should turn in an unorganized, jumbled mess, but it means to start off with, just free write, brainstorm your ideas. Just see where your thoughts take you. Don't be afraid to do that. Because then that'll establish your voice in the paper, and it'll just make it a better, well thought out paper. Make you successful. So, beginning with no structure in mind. Now, that could also mean after the fact, after you've did some free writing, brainstorming exercises, have some sort of rough draft, it helps oftentimes to outline after the fact. So then you can see a little bit more of the structure to it before you turn it in. But try not to start with an outline. Try to just start with free writing. Okay. Read. Okay, so read. Read. What is reading? Well, you all know what reading is. But what I mean by this, a lot of times you're going to need sources for your paper. And reading becomes, in college papers, not just a system of seeing what the source is about, but engaging and reflecting on what the source says and how the author presents the material. You're going to need to think of the gaps in the literature and the research. So reading, a good technique to help you with reading critically, to reflecting on what the reading says, is writing down questions as you're reading a source or as you're reading a text and saying, okay, why did the author say this? What did the author mean when they said this? He didn't explain this very well. Oh, she said that. I don't agree with that. So just come up with a few questions as you're reading the text. This'll help you engage with your topic, engage with the text. It'll be really helpful. Okay, so the next one relates into what reading is. Think. And redefine. Okay, so all of you know what thinking is, although critical thinking in college is, sometimes it's a whole new level. So that's why redefining is so important, because you have to be open to having your mind changed about certain things. Sometimes that happens when you're reading. You read a text and it's like, whoa, I've never thought of it that way. And your mind is blown and it's changed. Other times you read something and you're like, no, I don't agree with that. This author says this and that says that. You just need to think about and redefine what you think about topics. Think about what the purpose is. Or think about what your beliefs are and why you believe them. So this will give you a chance to explore your voice a little bit more. And voice is a really important topic in college level writing, because anybody can learn how to put out a good academic paper with perfect prose, but voice really shows who you are, and it opens up the eyes of your field, of your discipline. And that's the whole purpose of writing is to move your field forward, to move knowledge forward, to create knowledge. So we'll explore that in another podcast, what voice is. But just have that in the back of your mind. What is your voice in your writing? Okay, last tip. Okay, this one's important. Visit your friendly neighborhood writing center. So, I gotta admit, this is a plug because I work in a writing lab. But this is just important because writing is not a solitary act. It's an act that takes place in collaboration with others. You know, even when you're writing, you're bringing in these ideas that were created by something you read, by stuff you've seen. So writing is this act of collaboration. It's this act of building a community. And the Writing Center really does that because it allows you to get a different perspective of what others think about your writing. It allows you to get good feedback about your writing. But let's just say you don't have time to visit your writing center. Talk to your peers, talk to your instructors, get someone to read your writing. Because I know for me, when I write something, sometimes what I say does not make sense to the people who read it. So this is just really, really important to have someone else read your work, get feedback on it. It's just really helpful. So, like I said, writing is an act of collaboration. You're building a community. That's what your discipline is. You're building this community of knowledge. So, let's end on this note. Famous, he perhaps knew what he was talking about back in the day. That writing, you can't communicate with a work of writing. You can't talk to it. And it's a good way to record what happened and to, have that permanent record and maybe not have to store those ideas, those historical events in your head. But it doesn't have to be just that. Writing can help you discover meaning. It can open up all of these new worlds. So it's not just, it is a way of academia. It's a way to create knowledge, but it can be so much more than that. So make it what you want and go forth. So until next week, let me know if you have any questions or comments or even any ideas of what you want to see me do for my next podcast. So until then, so what does it mean to be a college writer? Bye.